From Perth, Australia, and broadcasting around the world, you're listening to The O Show with your host, Oren McCory. The O Show is a no-nonsense podcast bringing you the best advice on training, mindset, and nutrition to supercharge your efforts in the gym, the kitchen, and most importantly, in your head. Don't forget to share this episode on your social media. Now, let's get to it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Wherever you are in the world, please welcome to today's episode of the O Show, Massive Joe himself, Mr. Joseph Mencel. How are you doing, buddy?
How you going, Aaron? Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, it's a conversation that's been building for a bit, mate, and we met at I thought it was last year, but you just informed me it was in February at the state qualifier show where you were doing the emceeing. And since then I've thought, okay, we'll get him on at some stage, but let me build up the confidence on my hosting abilities before I get the big guns on. So guys, if anyone doesn't know who Joe is, Joe runs probably, in my opinion, the biggest supplement brand in Australia. And to be honest, Joe, it was the only company that I knew prior to moving here in 2018. And I can still remember Christmas, December 17.
Yeah.
Listened to a podcast with you while I was in London at my missus's house waiting to fly out here. So the fact is the two brands that I've known since being in the UK and Ireland are MassiveJoes and Doherty's. So to be up in that company is a pretty big company, I think, man.
Well, and isn't it funny that the first time you and I met was in the presence of Tony Doherty?
Yeah. It's funny how that works, right?
Well, it's all kind of like come together. But no, I didn't know that. But that's pretty cool to hear. We actually have a really strong group of customers and a really strong customer base over in the UK. So, and, you know, I go to apart from this year because of COVID, you know, I've been to Body Power every year for the last 5 years, and, you know, I really enjoy my time over in the UK and so it's cool to hear, really cool to hear.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. And I think you've got quite an inspirational story. So that's why I thought, let's get somebody on, talk to people about how you can build a business. Guys, if you don't know, Joe runs this company, super successful company. He's also an IFBB pro. He also, like I said, MCs bodybuilding shows, and you're the promoter for the South Australia show. So you've got a lot going on, buddy, and that's quite impressive. And we'll dig into that a wee bit later. Like, I think the fact that you managed to win your pro card while having such a successful business is phenomenal, because I'm dieting right now just for a photo shoot, and I know how hard it can be, never mind running a mega successful business on top of that. So kudos to that, mate. But we'll dig into that a little bit. Let's get a little bit of background on you first, though. So I know the story because I've listened to you on multiple podcasts before, but for anyone who doesn't know, let's talk about Joe and how MassiveJoes came about. How did you start the company, and sort of how have you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So it's a real grassroots story. And I have two ways that I can tell the story. One is a very extended, get into the finer details. And one is a little bit more of a Kentucky tour, for lack of a better term, that kind of, gives you the general picture of kind of where I started and how I got to the point I'm at now. And I usually tell that story in podcasts, or else we'll be here for a couple of hours. So pretty simply, real grassroots, my background before I got into competitive physique-based sports was basketball. So you guys can see behind me, there's the greatest with Ali and Jordan. I've got Jordan posters all over the place in where I am now, which is MassiveJoes headquarters, our head office. So my background was basketball. I played basketball. I must have picked up my first basketball when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I reckon. And I played as a kid through my teens and got quite good. So I was playing for state teams, national teams, got scouted to go play college basketball in the US, was in the squad for the Adelaide 36ers, which is the Adelaide NBL team. So I did quite well as a basketballer, and it looked like, you know, if I wanted to go pursue a career professionally in basketball, that was something that was on the cards for me until injury struck. So my first injury was a stress fracture in my lumbar spine. For those listeners and viewers who know a little bit about bone structures and whatnot, it's L5S1. So it's the vertebrae that sits like right at the bottom of your spine. Not uncommon to develop a stress fracture, especially if you're involved in high impact sports. So I developed the first stress fracture when I was 14. Then I developed a second stress fracture when I was 18 on the exact same vertebrae, which the chances of that happening are like pretty much impossible. But the consequence of that happening was it immediately ended anything that I was going to do with basketball in terms of career-wise. It was literally like that journey is over, because the risk of, you know, significant injury and worst case scenario paralysis was just too high. So that journey finished when I was 18 years old, and I was introduced to strength-based, like strength and conditioning, but strength-based training, resistance-based training when I was a teenager for basketball. So, you know, I do body weight stuff, and as I kind of got older, I get into the gym and lift weights, and it was really just trying to build my body and build strength and mass to become a better athlete and a better basketballer. But I think, you know, the viewers and the listeners who have a performance-based background would know that it's very polarizing with performance-based athletes. You either really enjoy the strength and conditioning, or you absolutely hate the strength and conditioning. There's kind of like no middle ground. Yeah. I always fell on the side of like, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed lifting weights. I enjoyed seeing my body grow and develop. And I really kind of took an interest in it. So when my basketball career came to an abrupt halt because of the injuries, I was very disappointed at the time, obviously as an 18-year-old, and, you know, kind of having your life change direction so quickly and so significantly. But I was like, well, you know, I really enjoy lifting weights. So why don't I, you know, spend more time in the weights room and kind of see where that leads me. And so I did. So I started lifting weights and, you know, explored the different kind of competitive aspects of lifting weights, which was, you know, powerlifting, strongman, or bodybuilding. And I'd always kind of been inspired by aesthetic physiques, you know, Arnold, Lou Ferrigno, you know, those kind of the 70s and the 80s classic like physique looking guys. And so I thought, well, you know, let me look at this bodybuilding thing. Let me, you know, figure out what the competitions are and what's involved. And, you know, because I knew nothing at the time. I didn't know how to diet, contest prep, pose, none of that shit. And this is 2000 and 2004 is kind of when I really took an interest. I was 19 at the time. And I was also at university. So I'd finished high school, and I kind of pulled these pieces in because they all correlate to kind of how I got to the point I am now. So I was at university at the time. I finished high school when I was 18 as well. I did really well in high school and got good enough grades to kind of do whatever I wanted at university. So I decided to do a double degree in mechanical engineering and law. So I was going to be at university for a long time. I knew that when I started at university in 2004, I was like, man, I'm going to be here for like 7-8 years doing these 2 degrees, you know, if I see them both through. So that kind of happened at the same time. So I ended up training at the university gym at Adelaide University. That was because I was spending so much time at university studying. So I just trained at the gym there, and then started training for my first competition, 2004. And as part of my research into, you know, what it took to do a contest prep and be a competitive bodybuilder, I came across supplementation. And I'd been introduced to it through basketball, but it was, you know, there was nothing to it. It was kind of like have a protein powder, you know, a protein shake after you train for recovery, and that was it. And with the timing of this, if you think, you know, back to the early 2000s when this was happening, the supplementation industry in the US really just like got on a rocket ship and just took off. So, you know, the big companies at that time, BSN exploded, Gaspari Nutrition, Optimum Nutrition were kind of like the big three, and their products were not available in Australia. But, you know, through my research and whatnot, I figured out, well, I can get them in the US and bring them over. So I started importing Optimum Nutrition, BSN, and Gaspari just for my personal use. So I had, you know, pre-workout Super Pump 250, BSN Nano Explode. You know, the very first intra workout, BSN had a product called Volume A's. Before BCAAs were a thing, it was like, it was pretty much intra workout carbohydrates, post workout, gold standard whey, BSN Synthesix. So I was bringing all these products in, using them, and I did quite well in my first round of competition. So I was, you know, I was in the teenage category, but, you know, for context as well, back then in 2004, competitive bodybuilding was nowhere near as commonplace as it is now. Like back then, if you did a bodybuilding competition, like everybody wanted to know about it because it was such a rare thing to do. Now it's much more commonplace in you know, through the growth of the fitness industry. It's kind of like, you know, a lot of people who train compete as like, you know, a kind of a destination or a goal. Back then it was like, man, like no one competed in bodybuilding. So because of that, and because I did quite well, people were kind of taking interest, especially at the university. You got your different, you know, university cliques and whatever. And so there was kind of a lot of interest in what I was doing, and people started asking questions about the supplements that I was taking. So I was like, well, you know, I can get you some, you know, if you want to take some of this pre-workout, this intra-workout, this post-workout, I can, you know, import some and sell it to you. So I started importing, you know, box quantities and selling them to guys that were training at the uni gym, at Adelaide University gym. And that kind of grew. And, you know, once again, it was kind of, I guess it was kind of like underground at the time. You know, bodybuilding was not a big thing. Supplements were not a big thing. It was very kind of underground, but it worked in my favor because it spread really quickly. So before I know it, I'm importing and selling supplements to the people that were training at Adelaide University gym. Then I'm filling up my car with supplements and driving to the Flinders University gym, which is on the other side of Adelaide, and selling to everyone who trained there. And then I drive to the Uni SA campus, which is back in the city, and sell to people who were training there, and literally like driving from campus to campus, selling supplements out the back of the car I was driving at the time. You know, real grassroots, you know, cash only business, very kind of grassroots, very underground. And I guess you know, I got to a point where I was like, man, like I didn't realize there was such a market for supplements. And I was doing, you know, it'd be thousands of dollars, but just locally at the time. And I thought to myself, like, man, if there's this much of a market just in these university gyms in Adelaide, there must be a market in the rest of the country. And I'd always, even through high school, I'd always kind of dabbled in, you know, little side hustles here and there. So I don't know if you remember the Lance Armstrong bracelets, the little, the little yellow bracelets. Yep. So, you know, back in high school, I was like 15, 16 years old. You couldn't get the bracelets in Australia. So I used to import them, sell them on eBay. You know, when the first iPods came out and it was very difficult to get Apple products in Australia, I used to import them, sell them on eBay, you know, sell them online. And so I kind of had that, I guess, that background in, you know, very basic e-commerce, but I kind of put the two and two together, and I was like, well, why don't I just start an eBay store for supplements? And so I did. And so 2005, I started the very first eBay supplement store. I was the first person ever to sell supplements on eBay. They didn't even have a category at the time. And back then it was auction only. There was no like buy it now. So you just put a product on there, set the reserve price, and people would just auction it up. It was like, it was the original eBay auction-based e-commerce site. And it just went absolutely crazy. Like I was importing products for, you know, for example, I'd land them at 30 Australian dollars and people would bid them to like 100, 150 Australian dollars for like a pre-workout supplement. You know, now the general price for a pre-workout is like 70 to 80 bucks. So it was like twice the price back in the early 2000s. Yep. And it just went absolutely crazy. But it didn't last very long because a lot of competition came in real quick. And, you know, the more competition on an auction-based website, there's, you know, more supply, less demand. And so the prices kind of get eroded. And so I very quickly knew that I needed to get off that platform and get to my own platform. And so I started a website. One of my friends at the time at university had some experience in web developing. So I got him to build me this very, very basic website. A couple of pages, had some products on there, had a shopping cart. And at the university gym at the time, they used to call me Massive Joe because I was like the bodybuilder at the university.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly massive, especially back then, but they used to call me Massive Joe. So I was thinking about a business now. I'm like, oh, I'll just call it Massive Joe's. And so that's how the original MassiveJoes started that was back in November 2005. I was 19 at the time. And then I kind of ran that as really like a side hustle, you know, because I was studying mechanical engineering and law. So I'd I'd train in the morning, study during the day, come home, pack orders, send them to the post office, and rinse and repeat over and over again. But it was always kind of like a bit of a side hustle. And I was, you know, I never kind of envisioned it to be anything more than a way to pay my way through university, because I knew I was going to be there a long time. I didn't really want to tutor because I spent so much time studying. I was like, well, I don't want to study and then go tutor at night. That's just going to drive me crazy. You know, I didn't want to work in like pubs and shit late at night because I'm trying to bodybuild. So that's not, you know, conducive to a bodybuilding lifestyle. I was having these late nights working in places back then you could smoke. People were always smoking everywhere. It was just shit. So I was like, well, I've got this kind of little side hustle and it's earning me enough, you know, kind of pocket money to pay my way through university. Nice. And so I just did it like that. You know, I just ran the MassiveJoes website, the eBay store. I was still doing my local delivery runs, you know, through the university gyms. And I did that right up until I finished. So I finished my engineering degree in 2008. And then I finished my law degree at the end of 2011. And at that point, so I had 2 degrees. I'd done a bunch of work for an oil and gas company here in Adelaide called Santos, which is one of the biggest oil and gas companies in the country. They were paying me really good money, had engineering degree, law degree, work experience. And by that time, the MassiveJoes business was, you know, doing over $1 million of sales a year. So I had this kind of, you know, quote unquote $1 million business in the background. And at that point, I kind of needed to make a decision. So it was like, okay, do I continue down the engineering path? I had a bunch of work experience. They were paying me really well to do it. Do I go down the legal path? I did 6 months of law experience as well. Or do I just kind of go, you know what, I'm just going to close the door on the professional career that I'd invested at that time. It was 8 years of tertiary study into, and go and pursue this business. And, you know, it was one of the most difficult decisions that I ever made because there was so much on the line, and particularly because I had invested so much time and effort and money into my, you know, what I thought I was going to do professionally, which was, you know, become an engineer or a lawyer or merge the two together and work in mergers and acquisitions or whatever it would have been. And to turn my back on that and go and pursue something with no security, very high risk, new industry. But, you know, I made the decision because at that stage of my life, and I was, at that point, I was 26 at that point. I had enough foresight to know that I needed to pursue what I was really passionate about. I needed to pursue what really piqued my interest, because if I didn't, I'd forever have it in the back of my mind, and I'd forever, not necessarily regret, but I'd look back on the decision and go, what if, you know, what if I had done that? What if I had pursued that? And so I made the decision to turn my back on you know, the investment in my professional career and commit to MassiveJoes full time. So 2012, and up until this point, so I'm literally running this $1 million business out of the bedroom in my parents' house. And then migrated to the spare room in the house that I was living in. So 2012, the first time in the history of my little side hustle, signed a lease on the first commercial building. So I had like an office warehouse together. Brought in my first employee, hired my first person to work for me. And then got into the bricks and mortar retail stores a year later. So I opened the first MassiveJoes bricks and mortar retail store in 2013, which was MassiveJoes Durnan Court. Did the next one 2014, did 2 in 2015. And then so from then to now, we've done 13 bricks and mortar retail stores. and, you know, I guess that everything else kind of came from there. You know, everything that the viewers and the listeners see now, whether it's MassiveJoes.com, you know, the TMJ apparel brand, which is representing, of course, you know, which is the apparel brand that's associated with MassiveJoes, the sponsored athlete program, the MassiveJoes challenge, you know, everything that you kind of see now really happened at that point that I committed to the business full time in 2012 to where we are now in 2020.
Nice, mate. Nice. And that's such an amazing story, man. And I'm sure lots of people will be inspired by that. And some people might even be going through stuff. And mate, to be honest, like I've wanted to get you on the podcast for a while, but the reason it sped it up is that I've actually got it in front of me because it's at my work desk.
Yeah.
Somebody recommended I get this bad boy, right? MassiveJoes on the lid. So I ordered this a few weeks ago. Yeah. And I think I ordered some of the America Labs way at the same time, but I was super impressed. Like, I think I ordered it on a Saturday. It was here on the Monday. I was like, I ordered on the Monday. It was here on the Tuesday. I was like, well, this is next level. Like, I literally, like, if I had went to a store here in Perth, like, I wouldn't have got it that quick because by the time I actually think about when I'm going to be able to get there, it just wouldn't have got here. And then I went for this photo shoot coming up. I was like, oh, let's see what apparel they've got. And I found some of the stringers, the singlets that you got there. Yeah. And their quality. And I see them again. It was here in a couple of days. And I was like, you know what? This is really good. And I was just talking to somebody. I was like, you know what? I need to get them on the podcast because it's such a good service. And I was trying to think when you were telling me the story, how did I find out about MassiveJoes in the UK? Yeah. I think it was when I started to get into the MTS way, the Mark Lobliner. Yeah. And he must have had a video on his YouTube or something where his MassiveJoes Australia come to visit him, or he visited you guys, or something like that. And I was like, who's these MassiveJoes guys? And then obviously that's when I found out who yous were, and I think followed yous from there. But like, you've got these brands. That's what got me thinking about it. You've got these brands where you've got like either exclusive contracts with or just really good relationships with. And let's talk about that. Like, how do you end up picking brands, or how does a brand like stand out to you to decide? Like, for example, America Labs now, you've been posting about how good the flavors were. I'm at the end of this dieting phase. I was like, I'm done with the boring chocolate or vanilla way. I was like, I need to talk about what Joe's getting. So I got some of the Choco Chubby Nuts and the double stuff flavors, and they're killer. So how do you pick brands like that? What makes stuff stand out and think like, right, that's worthy of TMJ status, MassiveJoes status? Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I generally look for in a new brand. Let's say a brand comes to us and they say, you know, we want to work with you guys. We're based in the US or Canada or the UK, wherever it is, and we want to work with you guys in the Australian marketplace. The first thing and most important thing is the quality of the products. Yeah, you know, the listeners and the viewers know through the story, I started this business as a consumer. You know, I was consuming supplements in the first place. I never started this business for financial gain. I never started this business to run a business as such. It was always consumer focused. So whenever I look at a new brand or a new product, I always ask myself, would I use the product? And the answer to that question is a very high bar, because I have access to whatever products I want anywhere on the planet. So that's kind of the first thing is, am I impressed by the product? You know, is it a good formula? Are the ingredients that they're using, the right ingredients in the right dosages? Is there synergism between the ingredients? If you're talking about protein powders, are the flavors where they need to be? Are they, world-class flavors, or are they, kind of just shitty flavors? So that's the first thing is the quality of the product needs to be there. The second thing that I'll then look at is the branding. And this is something that, to be honest with you, Aaron, still not many companies in the supplement space do it well. They just don't do the branding. A lot of companies now pay a lot of attention to the product development and the formulation side of things, and the flavoring and the consumer experience with the products. But a lot of them don't really understand branding. And it's such an important part of not necessarily customer acquisition, but customer retention.
You know, if you think about the brands that you are loyal to as a customer, and the viewers and the listeners can do this as well, most of the time they are exceptional at branding. The brand makes you feel something. It connects with you emotionally, and that's what keeps you coming back to the brand, and that's what keeps your customer loyalty. So from a customer retention perspective, it's very important. So that's the second thing I'll look at. And then the third thing is, who are the people behind the brand? You know, what's their reputation in the industry? You know, do they have is integrity important to them? Are they loyal? You know, what do our personal values align? Are we going to be able to develop a business relationship? And even more than that, a personal relationship, because, you know, in my opinion, that's even more important over the long term. And if we tick all those boxes, then we explore and we see what we can do.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And over the years, has any one brand really like jumped out at you and been like, these guys are top dog? Like, let's say the top 3 brands that you ever came to and were already like the finished product, and we're like, actually, they've got everything. I need these guys. I know that's a hard one to answer because you probably have so many brands, right?
It's difficult, to be honest. I actually don't think there's been a brand yet that has ticked all of the boxes.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that there have been brands, for example, I'll just take a few that we work with, right? So Core Nutritionals and Miracle Labs, they're separate brands, but they're run by the same people. So they tick the box of the product formulations, amazing. The flavors, amazing, fantastic. The people that run the brand, awesome people, great business relationships, great personal relationships. Haven't quite got the branding piece just yet. On the flip side, let's take, for example, a brand like Ghost Lifestyle, who we work quite closely with. Their branding is probably the best that really has ever been done in the industry, in my personal opinion. Probably Ghost and Redcon One are probably 2 of the best branded supplement brands ever created. The product formulations, some are good, some are not so good. They're not, you know, stellar product formulations across the line. They do some really exceptional products, and then they do some products that are not necessarily so great. So, you know, I think there's still yet to be a supplement brand that has done everything, you know, put big, bold ticks next to all of those boxes.
Yeah.
Which is exciting, because I'm sure someone's going to do it at some point.
Yeah, fair enough. So those ones would probably be the ones that jump out as probably close, but not quite the full cigar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And in the same realm, like what's the supplements that you personally would take? And I don't mean it needs to be the brands, but like what's the non-negotiables that you would have in your daily routine then, in terms of like whey protein, creatine, glutamine, greens? What's your favorites?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that I always start with is my fundamental supplementation and vitamins. So, you know, I'm talking about my green supplement, I'm talking about my organ health supplement, my vitamin C, my CoQ10, my fish oil. You know, that's where I start, because that's kind of setting, you know, it's like building a house. You have to build the foundation correctly first before you go and put, you know, the nice building on top, the awesome windows and the nice finishings and whatever. You got to have that foundation. And I kind of look at supplementation the same way. So, you know, the general health foundation for me is the biggest and most important part. And to be honest, that's the part that doesn't change whether I'm in off season, whether I'm pre-contest, whether I'm in between. The foundational supplement stack that I take, my vitamins, my minerals, my greens, my organ health, is consistent year round. Then I'll look at my performance base, and particularly around my workouts. So, you know, my pre-workout supplements, you know, nitric oxide boosters, for example, products that are going to help with strength, products that are going to help with muscular endurance, your beta alanines, your pico 2s, for example. My intra-workouts, which is my amino acids and my carbohydrates, and then my post-workout recovery. So, you know, my protein powder, my HMB, my creatine hydrochloride, my laxagenin, you know, that's kind of the way that I look at the performance-based supplementation. And then from there, it's recovery. So sleep supplementation. Once again, the creatine kind of comes in there as well. my protein peptides, helping me recover, helping me get good restful sleep so that I'm able to perform, over a 24-hour period at the highest possible level that I can.
Yep. And then in terms of, because I reckon a lot of listeners will probably be the big pre-workout fans. So let's say your favorite current stim, well, you're there just having a sip of a pre-workout now, is it?
It's an energy drink. It's not pre-workout.
Oh, okay.
Exactly, but
so in terms of if you're going to pick a stim one to get you going in the morning and a more pump-based one that you could take any time of day, what would your go-tos be at the moment?
So my go-to stim at the moment is a product called Harness by Arms Race Nutrition. And that's a very complete but very strong stimulant-based pre-workout. So it's not just stims. It's got products for nitric oxide production and muscle pump, products for muscular endurance, products for muscle power, products for mental focus as well. So that would be my stim base. My non-stim, recently I've really been enjoying Grind from Primabolics, which is completely stim-free, just focused on boosting nitric oxide, muscle pumps, muscular endurance, mental focus, and muscle power. So that'd be my non-stim or my pump formula.
Yeah, cool. And I'm sure if anyone wants to see the full range, they can go to the website. They can check out everything on there. I know that I was having a play around on the Redcon stuff and the America Labs lately, just when I was, there's a lot of stuff that I think is waiting to come back in stock, obviously probably delayed due to COVID. But I was just looking, I was like, oh, well, let's see what all the brands are. And there's some phenomenal brands on there. We've mentioned a lot of the main ones already, I'm sure. But yeah, people can go check out the website and see for themselves.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing we did mention, Joe, which you kind of brushed over a bit, is the quality of the apparel. And this is something that people have been telling me for a while, especially a lot of my female clients. They'll come in the tights and that. And it's something that until a while ago, I wouldn't have seen a lot of. People are always buying, the Muscle Nations. They're coming in. When these companies do the big drops, you'll see everyone wearing them basically. But then a client will come in wearing the TMJ. I'm like, oh, they got the TMJ stuff on. Cool. What? And they're like, yeah, it's super high quality. And like I said, I was wearing one today in the gym actually, and I was going to put one on for this, but I actually realized it needed iron. So I was like, it was fresh out of the wrapper. I was like, I can't go on a podcast for YouTube with creased. But mate, the quality is amazing. So when did you decide to get into that? And like, why, when a lot of companies, it's like a side project, it's like just a little bit of branding, maybe you'll do up a cheap stringer to give to people. Why did you go down the quality route over just something cheap that you can just give away as like a freebie nearly?
So when I first started, like my first introduction to apparel was exactly that. It was literally MassiveJoes branded, and it was just, I'd buy Gildan or Fruit of the Loom or American Apparel, just base products, nothing cut and sew, and just put a MassiveJoes logo on it. So it was literally MassiveJoes merchandise. And the TMJ in TMJ Apparel, this is kind of cool how this played out. So the TMJ actually stands for Team MassiveJoes, because what we started doing was for our sponsored athlete team was we started doing custom, we were kind of playing around with cut and sew. So it'd be, some cut and sew stuff, some kind of just blank apparel that we'd print on. But it was, TMJ was Team MassiveJoes Apparel, and it was exclusively for our sponsored athletes. And I guess the first decision that I made to really kind of, dive into the cut and sew stuff. And when I say cut and sew, I mean, you start with designs, you send them off to factories, they do custom samples for you, you tweak bits and pieces, they do different samples, tweak it again, and then that design goes to mass production. And every single piece of the apparel you're making decisions about. So, how are you going to finish the collar? How are you going to finish the sleeves? Where are you going to print? How are you going to print? What's the technique going to be? What's the sizing label going to say? Where's it going to sit? What's going to, every single piece of the apparel is from the ground up. That's effectively what cut and sew is. And so the deep dive into cut and sew was around the middle of 2015. And so that's when I kind of went out and found different suppliers in different countries, who does the best t-shirts, who does the best training accessories, knee sleeves, elbow sleeves, lifting straps, who does lifting belts, who specializes in leather, who specializes in dry fit type material, and just, really started diving into it in 2015. And so that got us to, we did that until about 2019, but it was always still kind of just a bit of a side project. It was never its own brand. It was always, it was still Team MassiveJoes apparel. Even though it was cut and sew, it was still MassiveJoes apparel effectively. The start of 2019 was really when I made the decision to separate the two brands. So MassiveJoes is the supplement side of the business and TMJ is the apparel side of the business, and really go, okay, now we're raising the bar. So we're not going to accept shit quality apparel. We are going to take as long as it takes to get the perfect t-shirt. We are going to take as long as it takes and go through as many suppliers as we need to go through to get the perfect leather lifting belt. And so I guess the start of 2019 was really that decision where we're going to invest a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money into this to really kind of take it to the next level as a brand. And I guess the catalyst for that was, kind of what you've alluded to, and, not to talk badly about any other fitness apparel brand, but the quality of the apparel was just not good. Like I'd buy different, stringers and t-shirts and lifting accessories from these big, especially in Australia, big like Australian fitness apparel brands. And the quality was like, I was like, what? I just paid how much for this? And this is what they sent me. And after 2 washes, I got to throw it out. And so I guess it was really kind of driven by, there was an opportunity in the marketplace to do it, and we were in the right position to do it. And so really it's been, 18 months now that TMJ has been a separate brand with the super high quality, with the branding that comes along with it, which probably coincides with when you kind of started seeing it around the place. So
yeah, I think definitely was definitely the past 18 months and more so over the past, I guess, 8 months or so. A lot of people buying it as well. So killer, man. And it goes to show that, the perfectionism there and the quality, which obviously stands in the customer service on both sides in terms of the supplements and the apparel. So good work on that, mate. I'm definitely looking forward to digging into the website more. I literally was in the gym one day as I just need some stringers for this photo shoot and just for an upgrade in general. And just found some really quickly, added them to the cart, went and bought them. So I'm going to dig into some more. I like the look of that t-shirt you've got on you now, so I'll have to go and check those out. No, that's killer, buddy. That's killer. So what about, now this year's been very turbulent for all of us. And we were speaking before about, how COVID and lockdowns and everything has affected everyone worldwide. What about the supplement industry then? Because here's the thing, when gyms are closed, obviously people aren't going to need pre-workouts. They might buy a protein powder if it's seen as a food supplement, that they're just going to make sure they hit their protein target. But in terms of buying pre-workouts and even creatines and stuff like that, maybe people weren't as willing to buy. So how has it been since really March, I guess, when we were locked down here for you? How's it been for MassiveJoes and for TMJ and for you personally?
It's been really challenging to, and I'm generally quite a positive and quite an optimistic person. So I'm always going to look for opportunities. I'm always going to, see the positives in anything that happens, whether it's, short-term business issues or whether it's a 1 in 100-year pandemic. To me, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to focus on what I can control, and I'm going to focus on my reaction to things that happen, not necessarily the things that happen themselves. So, it was incredibly challenging for 2 reasons. So I was prepping for the IFBB Pro Men's Physique Show at the 2020 Arnold Sports Festival Australia. So I'd prepped, I did a 26-week prep for that show because I turned pro, earned my IFBB Pro card in 2017. And, when you go, especially in men's physique, when you go from the amateur division to the professional division, the step up is incredible. To earn your pro card as an amateur, you have to be the top amateur. But the difference between being the top amateur and being the bottom pro is huge. So 2017, I owned my pro card. I took a bunch of time off. I did a full 2-year off season. And so I gave myself a lot of time to prep for the 2020 IFBB Pro Men's Physique Show at the Arnold Sports Festival. So I prepped for 26 weeks. I was 1 day into my peak week. So I was 6 days out from the show and they canceled the show because of COVID, because that's when they brought in the restrictions. You couldn't have more than 500 people. And then 2 days later, it was you couldn't have more than 100 people. And then 2 days later, it was everything's getting shut down, including gyms and all that shit. So I went from, a week before really the COVID restrictions hit, I was like, man, I'm going to be making my pro debut. I'm going to be in Melbourne, and then I was going to go and do the Pittsburgh Pro. I was going to go do the New York Pro, and I was trying to qualify for the Olympia this year. And so that got shut down like in a week. It was like, that's not happening. I'm like, shit, what, 26 week prep. I was like, man, this is like unbelievable. And then 2 days after that, they shut gyms down. And I'm just going, oh my God, what is going? And
worst week in history.
Man, you're 100% correct, because, as soon as you shut gyms down, you shut the fitness industry down.
Yeah.
And, the MassiveJoes business and the Team J Apparel business, being supplements and apparel, is complementary to the fitness industry. So if the fitness industry gets shut down, where does our business go from there? We've got nobody to sell to. And so we, to give some scale, we saw our sales drop by 60% over a 2-week period.
Wow.
So during the, when the first kind of, talk of COVID came, to the first round of lockdowns, to gyms being shut, we went from, we're actually up year on year, as we usually are, to down 60% year on year in 2 weeks. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, let's not worry about the prep. That's last week's problem. I need to figure out how I'm going to get my business through this, because a business of the scale we are now, we have 10 retail stores. I have almost 50 employees. I have a massive head office. I have a lot of overheads as a business. So that big of an effect on our revenue, I've just gone into damage control mode, and I'm like, holy shit, like how we just need to like survive, because the overheads don't stop. You still have to, you pay your staff, you still have to pay all your rents and all your bills and all that sort of thing. So, I made some very difficult decisions at the time that were the best possible decisions I could make, given the information I had at a point in time. So when they shut down the gyms, I actually made the decision to close all of our retail stores and bring all of our stock back from our retail stores to our head office and cancel all of our forward purchase orders. Because I was like, we just need to, we need to get back to the smallest possible overhead we can get to as a business, because we just don't know what's going to happen to our revenue. Like, how long are we going to be locked down for? How long are they going to close gyms for? How long is the fitness industry going to be effectively decimated for? We just didn't know. So I made some really difficult decisions at that point in time to bring our overhead back as low as we possibly could, and really cut off our expenditure as a business, to try and salvage what we could at the time. And so that was the decision that I made. And, it seems to have worked out pretty well for us. We're getting back now into reopening some of our retail stores. We're starting, we're still battling with international logistics in terms of actually getting, a lot of products that we sell come from overseas. Actually getting products from the USA and China and different Asian countries and different North American countries from their country of origin into Australia is the most difficult it's ever been. Because from an air freight perspective, all of your commercial flights into Australia internationally are cancelled. So the air freight capacity has dropped by like 98%. From a sea freight perspective, you've got blank sailings left, right, and center, because different parts of the world are locked down. And if you're locked down, that means the wharfs are locked down. People aren't working on the wharf. So ships get stuck in, and just everything from an international logistics perspective is, still very, very challenging, and will be for quite some time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And so how's that affected the stock on, say, for example, Redcon 1 or America Labs, like
Yep.
versus how often you would normally get it in
Yep.
versus what you have now and when the next shipment's due? What way has that
Yeah.
been affected?
Yeah, so the usual, let's go like our usual, if we were to use air freight, for example, the usual time from placing a purchase order to receiving it using air freight would be 2 weeks. The current turnaround time is 6 weeks.
Yeah.
From a sea freight perspective, the usual turnaround time would be 10 to 12 weeks. It's currently 26 to 30.
Wow.
So it's literally tripled the amount of time that it's taking us to receive purchase orders from when we're placing them, which from a forecasting perspective is impossible. You know,
Yeah.
you're forecasting based on how long what you're expecting things to get here, and then they're out by a factor of 3. So it's
Yeah.
it's really, really challenging.
Yeah, because I noticed that when I was on the site, I think there's like a new section or a coming soon sort of
Coming
section,
soon, yeah,
and
yeah,
the Cutler Nutrition was January, which obviously is only what 4 or 5 months away, but it
yeah,
just seems so long. But when you put it like
yeah.
that, where you're maybe waiting on a ship that's going to take 30 weeks to get here
Mm,
with that on it, that
yeah,
makes sense. So I
it's
guess
crazy.
the takeaway from my point is
Yeah.
if you're really excited about a product landing like the Cutler Way or whatever, and it doesn't land by January, don't give Joe shit because
I'll
everyone's in
take
the
it,
same
man. I'll
boat.
take all the heat. I'll take all the heat. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. So does that present its own challenges in terms of stock? Like, have you
Mm.
got plenty of stock still there to be shipped out? Or is it the case of if, for example, I like the America Labs chubby choco nut
Yeah.
sway, should I just stock up on it now in case you guys run out?
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing the best that we can, but it is very touch and go.
Yeah.
We, it's just very difficult for us to forecast. So we're trying to forecast based on the current freight times. But then still, if we have delays that are unexpected, or we have blank sailings, or we can't get freight onto a plane, we are having products that we shouldn't have run out of stock of that are out of stock for 2 or 3 weeks until they come back in. So yeah, I guess my advice in the interim is if you're second guessing whether or not you should buy products that are in stock at the moment, you should probably buy them.
Yeah, just in case.
We don't know when they go out, how long it's going to be till they get back in.
Yeah, because I was going through, and I think I was gonna order. Was it the Yankee Doodle? What's the cinnamon one from?
Yankee Doodle, yeah.
Somebody recommended it. They seen one of my stories where I'd put a
Yeah.
picture of them up, and they said, "Oh, this is the best flavor."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll just go order some." I've still got 2 3/4 full tubs sitting there of 2 different flavors.
Yeah.
I'm like, am I just being greedy now, and is it just like dieting that's getting me wanting another flavor?
Yeah.
But maybe I'll go on, and that's my excuse to go and order some more now, right?
I'm giving you the license to go and do it.
That's it, mate. That's it. So, mate, we did say we'd try to wrap this up by 2:00 because I know you're a busy man. So we'll end it here. And one thing I do want to end with though is, what's the one bit of advice, or what's the number one tip you could give anyone based on everything that's happened to you in your life and got you to where you are now? Or what's the one bit of advice that somebody's given you that's stuck with you that you're like, wow, if that person hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have got to where I am today?
Yeah. In what particular realm? Because I have a lot of different, a lot of life experience in different areas, and I kind of like to tailor the advice to whoever I'm kind of directing it towards to make sure they get the most value out of it.
Let's put it in terms of, because obviously you've sort of followed your dreams, right? You went from that decision. Let's do this. You went from that decision of law and engineering, which you pumped like 8 years of your life into, versus this like $1 million company that you built from the grassroots up, and it was going to be one or the other, and you followed your dreams and you went all in on one. What's the number one tip or a bit of advice you could give somebody who is maybe in similar situation, maybe not the exact same, but they want to follow their dreams, but they're just a little bit scared?
Yeah. The biggest piece of advice that I can give in that sort of situation is don't get caught up in the mindset of you have to get a return on your investment. So let's say, and this really applies to anything. It applies to career, it applies to fitness, it applies to relationships. Let's say that you've invested, a bunch of years, a bunch of time, and a bunch of effort in something that you thought was the direction that you wanted to go down. And it could be a career, it could be, a romantic partner who you've had a long-term relationship with. It could be a fitness journey. Perhaps you've been bodybuilding, or perhaps you've been doing CrossFit, or perhaps you've been, invested a lot in a particular performance sport. Don't get caught up in needing to get a return on that time and that energy investment, because the true value is actually in the journey of that investment. So the fact that I didn't go, to use me as an example, the fact that I didn't go and pursue a career in engineering or law doesn't mean that those 8 years, that time and that effort and the money that it cost me to do my tertiary education, it doesn't mean that all of that investment was wasted, because I learned so many skills along the way, and I had so many experiences along the way that built me into the person who I was. And I think a lot of the time, it's kind of the golden handcuffs type situation when it comes to career, where people stick with something because they're so obsessed with getting this return on the investment that they're too afraid to take a risk to go and try something else. And I think if you can get out of that mindset that the value is in the journey, not in the destination, it really kind of frees you up to go and pursue things that you really want to pursue, but you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's massive. That's a big one for people. And I think with your experience, you're speaking from, like, to me, that's incredible. The fact that you had 8 years done on this versus this company. And like you said, mate, like, it's not a waste of time, because if you hadn't went to uni, MassiveJoes wouldn't have existed anyway, right? So I think that's awesome, that there's always another side, that it's not just that it's a waste of time or you've invested this, so you need to see it through. It's a case of just follow what makes you happy, mate. And to be honest, you seem pretty happy to me, right? You're running a successful business, you're IFBB pro, you're a show promoter. It's been a smart decision, I think, to go all in on this. So congratulations, mate. You're an inspiration to a lot of people, and I just want to thank you for your time, mate. I know it was like short notice. I think I messaged you on like Monday or something when I got that delivery, and you're like, cool, I can do Thursday or Friday. I was like, sweet, let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you, man. I appreciate the invitation and the wanting to get me on the show, and I think it's been a really good conversation, and I hope that the listeners and the viewers can get some value out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So throw out your Instagram handles there of the apparel, the MassiveJoes, and your own one, so that people can follow you if they're not aware of who you are yet, mate.
Yeah, sure, man. So I'll start with my personal one. So my personal Instagram handle is at Joseph Mencel, JOSEPHMENCEL. And if you go to that Instagram handle, the Instagram handles for MassiveJoes and TMJ Apparel are in my bio. So That's probably the easiest way to get to them.
There we go. I'll make sure that whenever I post anything about this, I'll tag your personal one, and then they can find the other ones from there then. Yeah,
it's the easiest way.
Perfect, mate. Perfect. Well, thank you for your time, buddy. I'll not take any more of it, but I'm looking forward to this one coming out. I think it's going to be awesome for people, and there's lots of little nuggets, and I've enjoyed it. It's just been a nice chill chat with lots of nuggets, and hopefully everyone can give us some good feedback, tag us in it, let us know what you think. Absolutely. And it's been awesome, mate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening to The O Show with your host, Oren McCory. If you liked this episode, then please subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening and share this on your social media. We'll see you on the next episode for more no-nonsense advice to help you supercharge your efforts in the gym, in the kitchen, and most importantly, in your head. See you then.